The Trump administration says it will use military aircraft every day to help with deportations. In an interview with ABC News, President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, confirmed that flights will happen daily. Trump has promised to carry out the largest deportation plan in U.S. history. Chad Wolf served as Trump's acting Secretary of Homeland Security during the first administration, and I spoke to him about the deportation plans and what the president wants to see at the Canada-U.S. border. Former acting Secretary of Homeland Security Chad Wolf, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. Good to be here.
So the president's border czar, Tom Homan, says that these targeted enforcement operations by ICE are starting. The White House press secretary said on X on Friday, she showed the pictures of men boarding military planes and said those were deportation flights. Can you give us a sense of what message the administration is trying to send and your sense of how quickly this is happening?
Well, sure. I think the message that the Trump administration is sending is that they're serious about enforcing the law. I think we've had 4 years under President Biden where you had the lowest number of removals from the United States than we've ever had before. And so if you're going to have an immigration system and you're going to have a functioning immigration system, then part of it needs to be about deterrence, needs to be about consequences, that if people choose to break the law and come into the United States, and for a lot of these people that are being picked up over the last several days, they've broken the law again in the United States. So they're a criminal alien that you're going to be targeted for removal, and we're going to send officers out to do just that.
So the Department of Homeland Security also ended this policy that restricted ICE's ability to go into places like schools, churches, places I think that would normally be kind of sanctuaries for migrants. That's been in place since Obama. What do you make of this decision in terms of how it will, I guess, help President Trump get to where he wants to get?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of misinformation about this policy and what it does and what it doesn't do. And all the Trump team is saying as they rescinded this, that is, if ICE is targeting a criminal alien in a community, and that individual goes into a church, goes into a courthouse, goes into a number of different areas, heretofore you couldn't pursue that individual. You couldn't go into that area. We don't do that with local law enforcement. We don't do that with state law enforcement. We certainly don't do that with federal law enforcement. It was only ICE that couldn't do this. And so it makes little sense that if you have a criminal alien that is in a school setting of some kind, that you probably want them to be removed out of that setting. And so again, I think this gives discretion back to ICE. It allows them to make certain calls. They're still going to have to treat this very carefully, obviously. Yeah. But I think it's important to allow them to do their job.
The Trump administration will also reinstate the Remain in Mexico program. That was the program that Biden ended because he was worried that people were being left in dangerous conditions on the Mexico side of the border. You believe that was an effective policy. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, it's extremely effective, right? Because it got people that needed asylum protections under U.S. law, it got the protections quicker in the process. The issue here is that it takes 5, maybe even 6 years to get an asylum proceeding. And if individuals need protection under U.S. law, they shouldn't have to wait 5 years. Okay. The problem is that there's a lot of fraud in the system. 85% of those that seek asylum will never qualify based on U.S. requirements. And so the idea here is that you want to weed out the fraud and you want to get individuals that need that protection earlier in the process. And that's what that system was designed to do. We had it up and running for about 6-7 months. We started to see results, and then, as you indicated, it was ended.
There's also, the president has done a lot in the first few days, so I'm just trying to get through all of it. He has at least suggested that he's going to cut federal funding to sanctuary cities. There's a lot of talk about people going into Chicago. I don't know if that's one of the first ones. What would that mean practically for enforcement and for people trying to protect themselves inside those sanctuary cities?
Well, I think it's important, sanctuary jurisdictions, all ICE is asking is, when they pick up criminal aliens and they have them in a jail setting, for instance, in Chicago, what ICE would like to do is just to go into that jail setting, pick that individual up, and then remove them from the country. Right. What sanctuary jurisdictions say is, we're not going to allow you to do that. So in essence, they release those individuals back into the community, and now ICE has to go into the community. right, has to target those individuals in the community. It makes it less safe for law enforcement, it makes it less safe for that illegal alien as well. And so I'm hopeful that blue state mayors and governors and others will actually work with ICE, allow them to pick these individuals up in a jail setting. Absent that, though, ICE is still going to do their job. They're still going to go into these communities and remove individuals, but it's always better. It's always more efficient to have the support and that link with local law enforcement that obviously they don't have in certain cities right now.
One of the things the president has said to this country is, he's saying a series of things, but one of the things that he pointed to as a problem was the border. Fentanyl, even though there is only a very small amount of fentanyl crossing the border, but also just concerned about people going back and forth. So the Canadian government responded, said they put more than $1 billion more security along the border. I'm not sure that has convinced the president nor Tom Homan that this is enough. What do you make of Canada doing that? Do you agree that there is a problem at the northern border and that Canada did need to beef up security?
Yeah, I think the president and his team are looking at just the integrity of the U.S. borders holistically, right? So they're looking at both the southern border and the northern border. Obviously, different challenges along the northern border than we do with Mexico on the south. But I think there is a problem. We've seen increases not only in apprehensions, but also in fentanyl, as you indicated. Now, when you compare them to the southern border, they are certainly smaller, right, percentage-wise and everything else. But that's not to say that there isn't a growing problem there. So I think the president and his team is very serious, particularly as it relates to Canada, to say, we've got a problem here. And so before it spirals out of control, before we start to see numbers go astronomically high, let's put a plan in place to do just that. Now, where he will get comfortable, right? He talks about tariffs. He's talking about a variety of different things. Where he will get comfortable with the Canadian plan, I think, is a little bit up in the air, where he'll say, okay, I'm not going to impose those tariffs right now because they've shown a plan. They've shown me a timeline. They've done all these things, and I'm starting to see results. At the end of the day, that's what the team wants to see. They want to see results when we talk about the northern border. And if they get that, my guess, again, I don't speak for the president, but my guess is he'll start to back off a little bit on those tariffs. If he doesn't see any progress, or he thinks it's being delayed, or it's just not moving fast enough, my guess is actually you will see him follow through with that.
Yeah, I guess the problem is that the bar tends to shift from day to day. It's either the border, it's NATO spending, it's various things. So obviously difficult for the Canadian government to respond given that. Chad Wolf, really appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.